Not so long ago we discussed why the Rings of Power is such a resounding disappointment. The series has a lot of problems, but its main issue is a copyright problem. If you want to know the full story, the link to my original video discussing the copyright issues is in the description. But summarized, it means that Amazon is not allowed to tell us the actual stories from the Second Age that Tolkien wrote. They have to make up their own, resulting in the Rings of Power, which basically is the most expensive fanfiction ever made. But someone was of the opinion that Amazon did not even write this story themselves. And this resulted in a lawsuit and some legal trouble that is still going on to this day. Now I understand that you don't want to spend your day digging through manuscripts of court cases. So I did that for you guys, to tell you the full story of Polychron versus Amazon and the Tolkien Estate in this video. Let's start at the beginning. This story starts with a man called Demetrius Polychron. Demetrius is a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings movies and Tolkien's written works, as most of us are. And apparently, he simply couldn't get enough. So, sometime after 2010, Demetrius decided to continue the story on his own. He planned to write a 7-book sequel to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, effectively continuing the story from where Tolkien finished in A Return of the King. The name of this book series? The Fellowship of the King. In or before 2017, he finished the first volume of his book series, The Fellowship of the King, The War of the Rings. Demetrius must have felt like he struck gold. He registered his book with the US Copyright Office in the same year and sent a letter to Simon Tolkien, grandson of the famous writer, requesting a review of his manuscript. But Demetrius never got a reaction. After sulking for 2 years, the writer hired a lawyer to contact the Tolkien Estate, the legal body that manages the property of the deceased J.R.R. Tolkien. And this time, Demetrius got a response. But it was not what he expected, because the Tolkien Estate rebuffed any attempt at collaboration the very next day, as they have done for decades. But Demetrius was still not deterred. In a last-ditch attempt to work together with the Tolkien family, Demetrius drove to Simon Tolkien's house and dropped off the manuscript himself. Speaking about it afterwards, he notes that the copyright symbol was clearly visible on the manuscript. Demetrius would not get a response to this final attempt either. So he decides to publish the book independently from the Tolkien Estate. As a last act of courtesy, he sends Simon Tolkien a letter informing him of his decision. Demetrius follows through and publishes The Fellowship of the King in September of 2022. Coincidentally, the same month in which The Rings of Power aired on Amazon Prime. And it seemed that that was it. For the following 6 months, there was silence. But on the 14th of April of 2023, Demetrius filed a lawsuit against Amazon and the Tolkien Estate for copyright infringement of his book, for the amount of $250 million, which is the same amount for which Amazon purchased the rights to The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit and the appendices from the Tolkien Estate to begin with. Let's take a closer look at the details of this lawsuit. To start with, Demetrius argues that his book is an original work, even though it uses events and characters from Tolkien's original stories. Furthermore, Demetrius argues that Amazon used parts of his book as the basis for the story of the Rings of Power. To say it in his words, Demetrius alleges that characters and storylines he created for his book compose as much as 1/2 of the 8-episode series, and that in some cases the show copied exact language from his book. Some of the similarities mentioned are: both the book and the show have a Hobbit character named Elenor. In The Rings of Power she is one of the Harfoots. In Demetrius's book she is the daughter of Samwise Gamgee. Also, both travel Middle-earth in the company of a wizard. Both the book and the show have characters named Theo and Marigold. Demetrius argues that the story of Eddar is based on a storyline in his book about Glorfindel. Galadriel's story in The Rings of Power, in which she is a fierce warrior fighting against Sauron, is supposedly based on Galadriel's story in Demetrius' Fellowship of the King. And the list goes on. Having sent the manuscript for his book to the Tolkien Estate in the past, Demetrius is convinced that the estate and Amazon read his work and used it as a basis for the Rings of Power. but proving that the Tolkien Estate had actually read his work is going to be difficult. This was going to be some court case. But before the case ever comes before a judge, the Tolkien Estate takes action. On the 1st of June 2023, they countersue for writing and selling an unauthorized sequel of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. On top of his original work being stolen, Demetrius now faces far-reaching financial consequences if he loses these cases. But the wording of the countersuit also gives this story another dimension. According to the Tolkien Estate, they first learned that Demetrius was selling this sequel called The Fellowship of the King online in March of 2023. The estate sent a cease and desist letter but got no reaction. According to the complaint, the Tolkien Estate made multiple attempts in March and April to schedule a call with Demetrius to resolve this dispute before it becomes a legal matter. Demetrius Polychron, however, is said to have continuously postponed the call, claiming to be bedridden with a serious illness. It is because of this that the Tolkien Estate is quite surprised to learn that Demetrius has filed a lawsuit against them and Amazon on the 14th of April, a day on which he was supposedly too ill for correspondence with the estate. About 90 days later, the Tolkien Estate stops trying to play nice and sues Demetrius Polychron. But if you want to play nice, how about subscribing to the channel and dropping a like for the algorithm? I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and your help in achieving that goal is very much appreciated. Back to Demetrius' initial lawsuit. After some review, both Amazon and the estate file a motion to dismiss Demetrius' copyright claim. And on the 14th of August of 2023, the court grants both the defendants' motions to dismiss. Reasoning: although Demetrius took the proper steps in registering his book with the US Copyright Office, the court decides that his novel is not subject to copyright protection, because Demetrius' Fellowship of the King is an unauthorized derivative work based on the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, with the characters lifted lock, stock and barrel from the original works. This case is therefore similar in many aspects to Anderson vs. Stallone, a 1989 court case about a fan fiction script written for Rocky IV. On top of this, the court also held that Demetrius was not able to show substantial similarities between his book and the TV series, and the resemblance between the show and the book that were present were simply circumstantial. Demetrius has lost, and the countersuit by the Tolkien Estate against him is still pending, which could have far-reaching, or better said life-ruining financial consequences when he loses. Does he deserve this fate? I don't think so. I don't think of this as a publicity stunt or a flat-out lie of someone who wanted to financially enrich himself without doing the work. I genuinely think that Demetrius saw similarities between his book and the Rings of Power and felt slighted, especially after putting in so much effort to publish his book in accordance with the Tolkien Estate. In my opinion, this is not the story of a man with malign or evil intentions. This is the story of the ultimate Tolkien fanboy who just wanted to be heard by his idols. Which doesn't mean that a lawsuit was not a bad course of action. His chances of winning against a corporation as Amazon were non-existent from the start. At the time of writing this, Demetrius' personal website is down and his book is no longer available to buy online. Let's hope Demetrius finds a new purpose in life and that the countersuit will not completely ruin his life. And to end with a bit of irony, can you guess on which platform Demetrius actually sold his book before all of this happened? I'll give you a hint. What are your opinions about these court cases? Do you think Demetrius was simply wrong? Or do you think that Amazon might have taken some inspiration from his novel? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all very much for watching. See you next time.